The human face is quite the marvel. Our bodies are vastly complex with dozens of systems and several tens of trillions of cells and bacteria all working together. Our faces are like the display monitors of the computer communicating all of our thoughts and desires to the world. But where humans differ from machines is with emotion. Your eyes alone are enough to describe every single emotion out there. As artists, we usually want our audience to feel something from what we create. And to do that with characters, it usually comes back to our faces and the expressions we make. Even animals that have never seen humans before instinctively know to look at our eyes. Personally, I've always loved drawing faces, but lately I feel like I've hit a wall with my art. I don't know if any of you relate to this, but I've never really been able to commit to a grand project that I spend years working on, and I felt pretty bad about that. It's always just been one study here or another fan art there. However, this time I wanted to limit myself to a very clear focus, so I decided to go all in on facial animation. There's really nothing like the satisfaction of drawing a face that looks like it's alive. But I wanted to dive deeper to explore the emotional side of us and how we communicate that. How do you make someone truly connect to something that's only existing in 2D? You may think that 3D is the answer, but even then, translation is necessary because your audience is still only going to experience what you create on a 2D screen. That's why I got really excited when I found a course called Mastering Facial Animation and Emotional Storytelling by Alexis Wanneroy. Alexis is a character animator who worked on a ton of great films and shows, including one of my favorites, Arcane. This course is available on Coloso, which is an excellent online learning platform for a variety of creative topics, and they were kind enough to share the course with me, along with a discount code for you that covers the entire website. The course is technically focused on using Maya and the computer-generated animation workflow therein. But what blew me away was how transferable the core lessons in this course are. So whether you're working in 3D or 2D or just sketching out frames in Procreate, the fundamentals of emotional animation stay the same. In this video, I want to cover 3 main topics from the course: the mechanics of emotional storytelling, using reference to capture life, and balancing stylization versus realism. With each topic, we'll also look at how K-pop Demon Hunters employs these lessons as well. If you haven't heard of it already, it's a recent Netflix animation packed with stylized facial expressions and crazy exaggeration. Now, I want to be clear. I'm aware that K-pop Demon Hunters obviously originates from Korea as well, but it is not affiliated with Coloso or the course or Alexis in any way. What it does do, though, is make a perfect example to see just how professional animators breathe life and emotion into their characters. If you've ever struggled to make your characters feel something real or wondered how to push expression without losing believability, I think this is going to help you a lot. So the course itself is pretty in-depth with over 10 hours of content spread out over 16 videos. The section I really want to focus on is the chapter on emotions. He narrows it down to 7 core emotional categories: fear, sadness, disgust, surprise, anger, contentment, and happiness. What I love most is how specific he gets, not just on what the face is doing in an emotion, but what should not be happening as well. Take this for example. Did you know that you don't actually move your cheeks in fear or disgust? Apparently, cheek movement is mostly reserved for pain, especially when your cheeks are going up. You can cheat a little bit if the emotion is so intense that it does start to border on physical pain. So for example, imagine a character reacting to a grotesque leg injury from a car accident. Little details like this are super easy to overlook, but they really make all the difference when you're animating subtle facial changes. Alexis also pays attention to the muscles involved in changing expressions. It's not necessary to learn the name of every single one, but another major point that Alexis hammers home is that timing is everything. You can draw the perfect pose, the perfect mouth shape, the perfect squint, but if the timing of that expression is off, it just won't feel right. In K-pop Demon Hunters, the expressions are wild. They're stylized to the max. They leaned heavily into 2D styles like anime, but a cool fact is that the art direction actually made a point to use more rounded shapes in the mouth to make it look like the characters were speaking in Korean, despite speaking in English. In some of my rotoscoping studies, you can actually observe this yourself. Now, even though it's a different production pipeline and way more stylized than Arcane, the animation in K-pop Demon Hunters still knows when to reel things back for believability and authenticity. Even in the most exaggerated frames in the film, you can still tell what the characters are feeling instantly. It's a great reminder that expressive animation doesn't have to be super clean or realistic, it just has to communicate. One of the most unexpected moments in the course was when Alex showed samples from his previous students. He provided them with a rigged model that they would animate according to provided audio. The point of the example he shared was to emphasize the significance of the sternocleidomastoid muscle to show really powerful emotions.
Because if you...
So you can see in here how the neck get the influence.
At that point, I realized that even something small, when animated well, can hit just as hard as an intense fight scene.
Watch it all burn.
Alexis constantly encourages using reference, not just for poses, but to match the timing, weight, and transitions of what you're trying to create. He even shows side-by-side examples of reference footage with a real person acting next to the animated result from Arcane. One of the coolest things about the movie is that afterwards, a bunch of the animators started to share their process online. They posted clips of themselves acting out scenes that they later animated, as well as storyboards. If you look closely, the match between the performance and the final frames are insanely precise, and it goes to show that the best animators tend to also be great actors. Using reference in animation is not like with illustration. It's not really an option or even something that's just for beginners. It's simply how you create something believable and relatable to your viewers. If you have stylized characters, but let's say there's a solemn moment, it may be better to stick closer to the reference footage there as well. Alexis consistently discusses the idea that realism and style have to be balanced, especially if your characters are stylized, cartoony, or designed with exaggerated proportions. In those cases, copying a real-life pose or expression too literally can break the flow, and flow gives way to appeal. Sometimes, a real reference, something that's completely accurate, will still just look off. It can be too stiff or look too studied, like you traced a photo and forgot to breathe life into it. So this is where stylization becomes artistic decision and not a compromise. I found some really cool drawings on Pinterest where the artist compared their own stylized drawings next to each hand study that they did. And tell me what you think. I think they're cleaner, clearer, and more expressive. Your audience just doesn't care that much if it's accurate. They care if it feels right. That's why animators will often bend anatomy, distort shapes, and even cheat perspective sometimes. In animation, we just don't have the billions of metaphysical pixels, if you will, that are necessary to interpret the endless detail of reality. Now, I want to give you some practical takeaways that I've already started to apply in my own drawings and animations. One of the first things that clicked for me was this idea of working from big to small. We start with the core movement of the body before worrying about the finer stuff. Alexis reinforces this a lot. He talks about animating the large movements first, like the hips and the spine, and then the shoulders, etc. And then you layer in the facial expressions. When I posted my viral animation study of the blue shirt guy a couple months ago, half of the comments said some version of, "You're just tracking that guy's butt." But what I was actually focusing on was just the hip movement. This is something that you easily see in all sorts of dances, anatomy, even spiritual frameworks. Everything flows from the pelvis. It's the center of movement in the body, the literal source of life in biology, right? And once you get that working, everything else starts to build naturally around it. In the Maya rig that Alexis uses, the clavicles are just two thin rectangles that are rotating around the center of the sternum. When I animated shoulders myself, I just kept the shoulders moving around the center point, and the animation felt a lot more believable and fluid. Alexis also showed this facial rig shortcut map that kind of looks a little terrifying, to be honest. It looks like an animatronic from Five Nights at Freddy's, but once you get past that, I think it really helps you mentally organize what face parts are worth focusing on for a specific movement. This was pretty big for me because I tend to get overwhelmed thinking about all the potential things that can move when I'm animating. One of the biggest lessons I've learned this month, even outside of this course, is the importance of setting intention early with anything and everything that you do. Before you even draw the first frame, think of your shot like a comic. You should be able to summarize the emotional arc in just a few key poses. For example, imagine a character that's casually walking back home from a long day of work. In shot 1, they walk through the door. They have a tired or a neutral expression. But then in shot 2, they notice that everything is a total mess, so they have a look of surprise and shock. Then, in the final shot, shot 3, they find their loved one lying down on the ground in a pool of blood. They have an expression of horror and then sorrow. With just 3 images, you're already starting to tell the story. Alexis then says that he moves to animating between every 4 to 9 frames after this point, and then eventually animating everything on 2s. If you've done this properly, you've already mapped everything out and you don't run the risk of missing the overall point when you start to get into the details here, or even if you decide to go further and animate on 1s. This is so important that it has a separate job title called storyboarding. So yeah, I genuinely recommend this course to anyone who is trying to level up their character animation skills, especially around facial expressions. Whether you're working in 3D, 2D, or even in still illustrations, learning from someone like Alexis, someone who's clearly obsessed with expression, is incredibly valuable. And it's not just because of the awesome projects that he's worked on. He gives practical advice on how to get a job in animation at the end. He also talks about how to create and make the most of your references and what it takes to polish your animations to the next level. So if you've been stuck wondering how to make your expressions feel real, try animating something. It could be game-changing for you. Even 1 second of expressive motion will make your still drawings feel a lot more intentional. I found that animating naturally deepened my understanding of anatomy and improved my flow. I think you'll start to understand how forms move better, how emotion builds up, and what actually matters when you're trying to connect with your viewer. At the very least, if you like drawing in a lot of animated art styles, animation is how to learn how to draw in that way. If you've watched my videos before, you may know that I've reviewed a couple of courses from Coloso already. But what's different about this one is that the course is in English. Animation is already a complex language of its own, and the emotions are all personal. So it was great to be able to completely focus on the content without having to strain and read subtitles. I also noticed that Coloso's video player has improved a lot since last time. It's properly integrated into the website, smoother, and it remembers all of your progress. If you want to check out the course yourself, make sure to check the description for a discount code so don't miss out on taking your art skills to the next level this summer. Let me know if this video helped you think differently about expression or animation, or if you've taken the course yourself. I'd love to hear your thoughts and what lessons or concepts stuck with you the most. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Until then, keep drawing, stay balanced, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.